My name is Maya Lee. I'm from Maryland. I am a track and field athlete at Elon University.
Name Darrell Robinson, hometown, Sea Pleasant, Maryland. I go to Auburn University and I play football.
My name's Jamal Banks in Washington, D.C. I went to Wake Forest in Nebraska, played football.
I think most people are pretty aware of a lot of the identities that they interact with on a day-to-day basis, whether that be their occupation or their race, being black, having a certain hairstyle, or in my case, at one point, being a student athlete. The identity of being a black student athlete is one that I don't think is discussed enough and isn't given enough greater context to how a lot of black student athletes interact with that identity and how those preconceptions that people may have about them impact their day-to-day lives and what they think about themselves.
When I say like athletes, like, cause this is like every athlete, this goes far beyond race. If you're an athlete, like you're automatically like, oh, like they just think not the worst, but close to it. Like the average, oh, I know he doesn't do worse. Oh, like he's just lazy, he's stuck up, like blah, 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 blah. Like they just automatically think that. Think like we like Hollywood or something. Like
I remember my time as a student athlete, a lot of my life was spent trying to combat a lot of these stereotypes that were had about black student athletes, whether it was not caring about class or their education, majoring in some unimportant major that doesn't help with having a good career in the future, or just being faithful in a relationship that I was in.
And so I try to do a lot in class or really make it known that I am a good student so that professors don't think anything else. Like I make sure that I'm always on it, especially in the classroom.
A lot of these stereotypes are often just accepted by black student athletes and are ones that just people choosing to lean into or represents their lifestyle. But I didn't think that what's representative of black student athletes was often telling the full story, and that the stories of black student athletes wasn't being told to its greatest extent. A lot of what's told about black student athletes is only about their experiences on the field or in a post-game interview or something being in some kind of drama on the internet or having legal issues, but rarely ever do we really hear from student athletes about what their life was like on campus or interacting with other students, especially at a PWI, being a minority.
I guess we come off like a little bit more aggressive. Sometimes I could be saying something to like compliment or I'm saying like I really mean good by what I say, but I guess like sometimes they say I come off as like aggressive or like the whole time like I'm not on that really, but it's just like it's kind of a disconnect because they're not used to talking to somebody like me. I'm not used to really talking to somebody like them. So I would say like that's probably like the biggest conflict. Like sometimes we be misunderstood.
Oftentimes these black student athletes aren't understood for why they constantly choose to go to these predominantly white institutions or PWIs instead of going to HBCUs where they would be among a lot more of their peers and people that may have more shared life experiences. But I think that the market of student athletics isn't one that's greatly understood by those that aren't in it, that doesn't let them know how these PWIs are often the best and really only option for a lot of these student athletes to go and chase their professional dreams.
I ain't really hear from a lot of HBCUs. Honestly, it may have been because of my caliber per se, where, schools like that, like, man, I don't know if I could get him. Like, he this and that, or he got this offer and that offer. So I think that kind of played a role in it. For me, it was about going to school for free. It was about getting an education and, using, the system to help me level up, in life. And so that's really what the main focus was, no matter where it was. And as far as like HBCU, it really wasn't big on the thought because it was about playing at a really high level, and it's tough at the HBCU level.
With a greater understanding now of why a lot of these student athletes might choose to go to a PWI over an HBCU, we now have to come to an understanding about how the intersectional relationship between being black and being a student athlete come together to kind of create this unique experience that may be able to be written off as just the experiences of student athletes, but comes with a greater cultural understanding of why a lot of black students face these particular issues that their white counterparts might not.
The fact that sometimes it's hard to be all of me in one space, but I'm a student athlete, for example, so most of the time in the athletic spaces, that's all I'm talking about. But it wasn't until my junior and senior year that I started actually telling the people about the things that I do on campus. I'm very active on on campus. And also just about me personally, like just because I'm an athlete doesn't mean that's everything I do. That's not my life. Like I love musical theater, I love art, I love to sing, like those types of things. And I love being like the leader on campus, my sorority and stuff like that. So just kind of like trying to bridge the gap between those two. But a lot of times like I would feel like in the athletic spaces, like I wouldn't talk about it as much, or like in more academic spaces or like sorority spaces, I don't really talk about athletics as much, if that makes sense. But it's like, it's all a part of me.
It all comes down to a cultural relatability shared between people. So when you have your student athlete in a class that may be full of all other white students that aren't student athletes, or even may be student athletes, but there's still a level of cultural disconnect that isn't able to be shared between that particular student and those that they're surrounded by. So that kind of creates a level of double ostracization that exists between the black student athlete, the white student athlete, and their other non-athletic counterpart.
The part that had me feeling that way probably is the athlete part. And obviously I'm a minority, so that part too. But like I said, like I kind of felt that way, since elementary school. I would say like obviously being an athlete, and then like I talked about the judgments, like people assuming something just because of what I do or what I look like, definitely play factors in that.
You think you only gave credit to the athlete part because you had been experienced the black part for so long?
Yeah, for sure.
I get that.
Sure.
I get that.
Cause then I'm just walking to the car. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I adapted to it.
I didn't have a full awareness of this double loneliness experienced by student athletes until I stepped away from football, where I felt less of a disconnect between myself and my other white student counterparts, as it felt like there was less different between us than there was at the time when I was a student athlete. I think this leads more credence to the power of the voices of black student athletes, as when you have those like Bob Grant at Wake Forest speaking against KKK rallies, even he was able to speak from a particular space of double loneliness that wasn't experienced by other black students at Wake Forest. Fast forwarding to the modern era, and student athletes now have a more powerful voice than they ever have and are in much more of the public spotlight than they ever were before. And with that, I think needs to be encouraged more of the voices of black student athletes to be spoken up because of their specific unique experiences and how those experiences give a greater context to the world around them. Student athletes often have some of, if not the largest platforms on a university's campus, and having them utilize their platforms to better communicate issues that they might be facing or just be able to communicate the true essence of their experiences might allow for the light to be shed on other experiences of other ostracized communities within a university and the students that comprise it.